Hey, another quick update on the Enfield engine teardown. I have sourced a spot to get a regular size 3/4 inch drive socket. It's 2 inches and 1/16. That will fit over top of that nut, and even the when you get to the 3/4 inch drive socket size that are pretty huge, it will leave me enough room to get a breaker bar on it and get that big honking nut off of there. On the timing side, I've got the timing cover off. There was a neat little tool to get the mechanical advance off that was in the tool kit, which allowed the timing cover to come off. Now I've got a bit of a situation. There's a lot of neat engineering things on this, and then there's, to me, a lot of not so neat engineering things on this, like getting the timing chain off. Easy as 1, 2, 3. It's just 2 or 3 little steps in the manual, which says take this nut off of here. This is the tensioner basically for the cam chain. So this is nice and loose there now. To torque up the chain, you bring that up, and that brings the tension up in a chain, and then this is a lock nut and a washer that goes down over top of that and clamps it in place for the proper tension. So to remove the timing chain is quite simple. You just have to take this plate off of here by removing the nut and getting that little fricking stud out of there. So now I've got to figure out how to do that with Whitworth threaded nuts. I'm going to need another nut to try and create a jam situation in there to get this off. First I'm going to have to find a frigging Whitworth nut. Then I'll have to see if I can torque them down tight enough to jam them up on each other to actually get that stud out of there. Once the stud's out of there, this plate just lifts off, and the entire sprocket, the tensioner, which is an off camber, out of round basically surface there that does the torquing, this will just slide out, leaving the sprocket behind. The sprocket drops off, and then the whole chain pulls out. So there's my next little dilemma, to try and get that stud out of there in order to get that adjusting plate out of there, which will allow the adjuster sprocket off. So I'll let you know when I'm done. Cheers. Cheers everybody, Socket Man here for another quick update. We're a couple days later. I had a bit of a challenge getting that nut off, but it is off now. Special tool, Royal Enfield Special Tool 49907 was not easily available since there hasn't been any dealerships around for 40 years or so. So I have Socket Man tool number 1. That would be a 2 1/16 inch impact socket with a reducer. And it's such a large socket at that size, I didn't even have to get the deep one. It was large enough to, or deep enough to get over top of there and get onto the nut. I had my wife out to provide support on the engine, and I've also protected the connecting rods in the engine casing by putting some, this is an aluminum rod through, and some protectors there to keep everything from, make sure there's no damage basically. Anyway, I reefed on her pretty good, pretty much stood on it on a 1/2 inch breaker bar, and she didn't budge, so I had to break out the impact wrench, and it popped off pretty quickly with that. I've left a couple small marks on the nut, but nothing that you can actually really feel, so it came off quite easily. So the primary cover's off, or sorry, the primary drive is now off, the clutch basket is off. It slid right out, so next will be taking the rest of that clutch assembly off, and then taking that entire cover off of there. On the other side, I was able to get the timing chain off finally. When I found another nut that would allow me to create a jam situation here to try and get that stud out. When I actually put that other nut on, the stud started spinning. So it was not in there tight at all. It was just basically a little more than finger tight. And once I found that out, and once I got the stud out, then the timing chain all came off pretty easily. So that's it for now. Next steps will be taking that primary cover off the other side, and then I'm pretty much ready to split the engine from the gear case. That's it for now. Cheers. Well, I'm back in business for about 10 minutes and back out of business. Getting ready to pull this primary cover off. It's held on by 3 Allen head bolts that go in. They look like this here. and then the big retainer spacer there in the center, which will come off fairly easily, should. Anyway, I went to pop these off. 2 of them popped out, no problem. Number 3, of course, is seized, and I'm now rounding off. I haven't quite fully rounded, but I'm rounding off the socket indentation inside. I've taken the impact hammer and impact wrench to it to no avail. So I'm wondering what I'm going to do there at this point in time. It's pretty tough to get any kind of heat in behind there. If I heat out here, all I'll do is heat the aluminum, and there's no way to get some heat on the inside. So I could end up having to drill that sucker out of there and then replacing it, getting it out later on and replacing it with a new one. Anyway, so back out of business. Another problem to figure out how to get around. That's working on a 41-year-old British motorcycle, just the way it is. Anyway, cheers.